Hello there guys, and welcome back to another rune build video of Titan Quest. So this is the third rune related build that I'm doing, and this one is a Dragon Hunter. So that's hunting and rune masteries. We've already done Berserker, which was a rune and warfare, and Cider Worker, which was rune and dream. So check those out if you haven't yet. And now we're gonna proceed into Dragon Hunter. Let's get to the skills. So there are two ways you can play with, like most hunting classes. You either going for the spear primarily or for the bows. Again, you can go for both, but you'll be spreading your skills a bit too thin. So I'd advise to choose one of those play styles. So I'm gonna tackle the spear ones first. So that's more of your melee style, so spear and shield. So I'll begin with hunting mastery. Although you can start with either of them, though I think hunting will be more of your core mastery here, so probably start with hunting will be slightly better. Actually, I'll start from the left as usual to the right. So the net, I usually don't really get the net because it's only good like in the Act 1 normal, and then it gets weaker. But Study Prey is one of the best debuffs in the game in my opinion, so that's really worth getting because of the resistance to the physical and piercing damages. And its synergy, Flush Out, well, I wouldn't say it's quite mandatory, but it's only 6 points, and if you're going for the spear version, I'd say the defensive ability debuff is actually quite good on that. Elemental resistance, not some, you're not going to be really using that so much with this class. Bleeding is, well, you're not, so long as you're not doing the bleeder build, but defensive ability debuff is actually pretty good on this. Next is Call of the Hunt. That's it's a good temporary buff, so I generally quite recommend it. It's good for your piercing and bleeding damage buffs by percentage, that is, and also extra damage to specific monster types like the Beastmen. Yeah, increase your attack speed as well. Then Marksmanship. You're not gonna be going for Marksmanship with your spear, Dragon Hunter, so you can forget about Marksmanship. Takedown. Like now, I put points into takedown here, but I'd say this is completely optional skill for this class because you already have Thunderstrike in the Rune Mastery, and I think Thunderstrike is better in many regards. So definitely get Thunderstrike, but if you want to get an additional charging skill, then takedown is alright, but just remember that it's 12 skill points and you could put those 12 skill points elsewhere. So just keep that in mind. Now Gouge, like in the past, I always used to tell you to ignore it, but it's better now in the anniversary update because bleeding damage actually scales with the dexterity. But if you're not going into a bleeder build, like a bleeding focused build, then I wouldn't really recommend getting this. And I mean, you could go for a bleeding build with this class easily, but there isn't much that the Rune Mastery is going to be contributing to that build. So if you want to go for a bleeder build, I'd actually recommend choosing Rogue or Spirit as your second mastery, because Rogue has extra bleeding damage buffs and also quite huge bonus to dexterity, and Spirit has the Necrosis, which has a huge debuff to enemy bleeding resistances. So if you're going for the bleeder build, then Rune is not good second mastery. So you go for Brigand class or Bone Charmer class. Now volley is pretty much mandatory for every hunter, so both archers and spear ones, because volley does, for spear it'll do 3 hits at once, and with the arrows it'll shoot 3 arrows at once, so volley is very good, and at maximum level 16% chance to be used, which is great. And Art of the Hunt, pretty much mandatory for all hunter classes as well. It's a permanent buff, so it's got energy reserve and it stays on entire time, so it's got nice piercing and bleeding damage buffs and some damage against certain monster types, and also its synergies as well. The chance to avoid projectiles is great, and I only put 1 point in Trailblazing usually to get that 100% reduced entrapment duration. Then I go Woodlaw, is pretty much mandatory skill for all hunters as well, so get that huge defensive ability boost and also attack speed. That's pretty much one of the first skills you should get, to be honest. Herbal Remedy, that's another good skill. This is actually a temporary buff, but it lasts a long time if you got all like 6 points in it. You don't have to max it right away. I mean, so long as you get a couple points early on, that's already good, and then later on you can max it. It gives a huge amount of poison resistance, 72% at maximum level, and got 480-second duration, so that's really long time, you know, like 8 minutes if I'm not mistaken. And then Monster Lure, I don't usually, I mean, it's okay, but you've got your skill points to be spent in a lot of other better skills, in my opinion. Now, for Rune, okay, so let's go for Rune Mastery. So you got the Rune weapon. Now, with the hunting mastery, you, as a spear hunter, you don't have left mouse button skill, so you could go for Rune weapon actually. I mean, you're not going to be getting much benefit from it because it's very much elemental based. It favors more of intelligence and stuff, but you could get some benefits from it. You could put 1 point in a base skill and also in its synergy, and then max out the energy drain, because energy drain is actually pretty good since it gives quite a nice debuffs against enemies that you attack. It debuffs their offensive ability and also slows them down, so it's nice. It's pretty nice. If you have enough spare skill points, like closer to the end, you could actually max out the base skill itself. The reason for that is because it increases your total damage by a percentage, so it will play into increasing your physical and piercing damage as well. So it's not just the elemental damage type that's gonna favor, it's gonna increase your total damage as well, but you better spend those your early skill points in other skills first, and then if you have spares, then you can max out that skill. Then Sacred Rage and Frightening Power, it's pretty good skills. Both of them, as I always mention, they're nice, of those panic activations that when you're getting low in health, and they give you a huge boost and also debuff the enemies. And they actually don't have a cooldown, so they trigger every time your health drops. Reckless Offense you're not going to be using with this class because you're not really going to dual wield here. Energy Armor, as always I mentioned, it's not quite worth it in Legendary because it's going to be falling off quite quickly from after it absorbs enemy damage. So it's like 1 or 2 enemy attacks are going to pretty much take it off. Now, Runewood Feather, with the Spear version of this class, you would definitely want to go for Runewood Feather. As I always say, it's an amazing skill because of that huge offensive ability bonus that it gives, and it reduces some strength requirement for weapons. So, probably not gonna get that much use out of strength requirement debuff reduction, because spears don't usually have much huge requirement for strength. But yeah, the offensive ability bonus is definitely worth it. Then Runewood Explode, that's another good one, since it spreads your damage in an arc, so I put at least a few points in it, but if you can get all 10, that's pretty great. You get 20% chance to be used, and it also does some stun on the enemy. Runewood Absorb, if you have enough spare skill points, then I definitely get it. I mean, you're not going to be running out of energy too fast, but if you have enough spare skill points towards the end, then this is nice. It also increases your shield recovery time, so you get your shield actually each shield having more bang for its buck, basically. Thunderstrike, as I always say, it's pretty amazing skill, so I get it with pretty much every rune class. It's an amazing charging move, and it does quite a lot of damage, and I mean it works with ranged weapons as well, but I'll mention that in the Archer version. And Seal of Fate, again, as I mentioned in previous classes, it's okay, but you've got a lot better skills to put your points into. And the thing about Seal of Fate, it takes a while to charge up, and it's a quite small area, so by the time it will actually have an effect, you might only hit 1 enemy at most. Or if you get really lucky, maybe 2, but most times you'll be missing it. And the mines, yeah, not going to be getting much use out of the mines, because you're not going to be getting any kind of elemental damage speciality here. Rune of Life, pretty much every rune class should get this because of the buffs to the bleeding and vitality resistances, and you will get a nice benefit from the strength increase as well. So yeah, I'd get that, definitely max this out. And then Menrir Wall and Guardian Stones, you're not likely to need with this class. It's yeah, Menrir Wall is not that good, and Guardian Stones would be better for an archer, but I'll mention that in a sec. So yeah, that's pretty much the spear version. Now, for the archer version, the bow, there are only a few changes, so I'll highlight the changes. So I've highlighted the changes here. So first, the hunting mastery. First of all, you can forget about the flush out. If you're going for study prey, which you should go for study prey, you can forget about the flush out pretty much, because the defensive ability debuff is not going to be useful with the bow, because the bow skips the offensive and defensive ability checks, so you don't need that. And you obviously want to you're going to be putting a lot of points in the marksmanship tree, because marksmanship tree is pretty much the bread and butter of any archer. So you should be going, but that's a very skill point hungry tree. If you know, that's 36 skill points. And if you didn't know, the scatter shot was nerfed quite a fair bit since the anniversary edition update, but it's still quite good. Like it's doing less piercing damage now and more bleeding damage, but it's still okay. It's still quite worth getting. It still makes your, arrows much more powerful. You can definitely forget about takedown. I mean, whereas with spear it was optional, with archer it's completely useless because it's only good for spears. So you can forget about that. All the other hunting skills pretty much stay the same, and in Rune, I'll highlight again. So you can completely forget about the Rune weapon because you're going for marksmanship as your left mouse button skill. So you can forget about the Rune weapon skills. You can forget about the Rune Void Feather, because again offensive abilities you're not going to be factoring into the archer playstyle, and you can forget about Rune Void Absorb because you don't have a shield this time if you're going to be going bow and arrow. And I did put 1 point in Guardian Stones, well, 1 in Menhir Wall and 1 Guardian Stones, because you need Menhir Wall for Guardian Stones. But I'd say it's optional, you don't really need to get it, but if you want like an additional way to put some kind of barricade between you and the enemies, because as an archer you'll be a bit squishy and you want to keep your distance, so it could come in handy, like maybe with a few points to stall the enemies, sort of. But yeah, otherwise other skill points stay the same, and Thunderstrike works quite well with bows as well. It just shoots a huge amount of arrows at the same time, so it's really good. And Rune Would Explode actually is going to work quite well with arrows as well, because it's going to cause that explosion and stun the enemies before they can get close to you. So, alright, and now let's just quickly jump to the attributes. So, strength and dexterity will be your main stats. You can forget about the intelligence completely. And ever since anniversary update, dexterity plays more of a part in piercing damage, because before it played some part, but now it plays a bit more part in your piercing damage builds. So you probably want to go like 1-to-1 ratio between strength and dexterity, or maybe about 1.5 to 1 between strength and dexterity. I mean, strength still is important because it increases your overall damage, and piercing is always a factor of your physical, so you want to increase your physical overall as well. So strength is quite important. And you might want to also put maybe a few points in the energy, because there are quite a lot of, if you notice, there are quite a lot of active skills you're going to be using with this build. You're going to study prey there, then you've got Thunderstrike, you possibly have Takedown, and you have all those buffs. Herbal Remedy and Rune of Life, both, they don't use energy reserve, they actually have an energy cost per activation. So you actually will be using quite a fair bit of energy, so you might want to put a few points in your energy as well, so that you don't run out too fast. But yeah, that's it. That's Dragon Hunter. It's a pretty interesting class. So, well, most classes in Titan Quest are interesting, if not all of them. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this and found this helpful. And feel free to give suggestions for which rune build you want me to do next. So, see you later. Bye bye.